Hello, welcome in another episode of the science involved in the manufacturing of parenteral drugs. If you are a patient, young or future graduate, professional and or executive, follow me today to see how the proper use of statistical methodologies for critical instrument calibration affects the overall state of control of a manufacturing facility, its commitment to regulatory agencies, and the safety of the product being manufactured from within.
In high-stakes manufacturing, every single measurement counts. But what if the numbers you rely on every day aren't telling you the whole truth? The reality is, every measurement has a hidden margin of error. So in this explainer, we're going to break down exactly how you find that margin to calculate a safe operating window, a really critical value we call loop tolerance.
So let me start by asking you a question. Can any instrument, I don't care how advanced or expensive it is, ever give you a perfect 100% exact value? Well, the answer might surprise you. It's no, not even close. And understanding why that's true is the absolute key to mastering your entire process. And look, this isn't just some academic thought experiment. In industries that follow strict good manufacturing practices, or GMP, a tiny, unaccounted for error can have enormous consequences. We're talking about product recalls, failed audits, and honestly, huge financial losses. The stakes really couldn't be any higher. So here's our game plan for this explainer. First, we'll talk about why no measurement is ever perfect. Then we'll get on the same page with some key terms. After that, we'll look at who does what. Then we'll walk through the actual calculation, and finally, we'll tie it all together with a really practical, real-world example. All right, let's dive in. Okay, first things first. Let's get right to the core idea here. The entire reason a procedure like this even exists is to deal with a fundamental truth of our physical world. Absolute, total certainty in any measurement is simply impossible. Think of it like this. A number by itself, say 100 degrees, is just an estimate. A complete professional measurement is always going to have a statement of its uncertainty. It's the difference between saying the temperature is 100 degrees and saying the temperature is 100 degrees plus or minus half a degree. And that plus or minus part, that's not a flaw, it's a feature. It's where the real engineering begins.
Now, to really tackle this problem, we all need to be speaking the same language. So let's break down the three most important terms you're going to come across. Getting these straight is absolutely crucial for everything that's coming next.
First up, we have standard uncertainty, or UI. The easiest way to think about this is to imagine your measurement system is a chain. Well, UI is the uncertainty of just a single link in that chain. Maybe it's the sensor, or the transmitter, or an input card. It's the fundamental building block for our whole calculation.
Next, once you have all those individual UI values for each link, you combine them, and that gives you the combined standard uncertainty, or UC. This number represents the total estimated uncertainty for the entire system, the whole loop. It's basically the sum of all the little imperfections from every single component.
And that brings us to our final destination, the loop tolerance, or just UT. This is the number we've been working towards, the practical, actionable result. It takes that combined uncertainty and expands it to give us a confident operating range. This is the number that tells a technician in the field if a system is good to go or needs adjustment. So when you see it laid out like this, the process is pretty logical, right? We find the uncertainty for each individual piece, we combine them into a total, and then we use that total to figure out our final tolerance. It's a clear, step-by-step journey from the individual parts to a number you can actually use. Now, this whole calculation doesn't just happen in a vacuum. It's not a one-person show. It's a carefully managed process that's really a team sport, with very clear roles and responsibilities. So let's take a look at who does what to make sure this gets done right. You can think of it as a three-person team. First, you have the system owner, who is usually an engineer. They're responsible for doing the actual calculation and documenting it. Then you have the calibration technician. They're the boots on the ground, taking that number and applying it in the field. And finally, you have quality assurance. They are the final gatekeeper, reviewing and approving the whole thing to make sure it meets every standard.
All right, it's time to roll up our sleeves and get into the math. But hey, don't worry, it's a lot more straightforward than it might look. We're going to break down the exact formula we use to combine all those little uncertainties.
So the engine that drives all of this is a method called root sum of squares. It's the standard, statistically sound way to combine different, unrelated sources of error. And the process is simple. You take the uncertainty value for each component, you square it, you add all those squared numbers together, and then you just take the square root of that big sum. And bam! The result is our combined standard uncertainty, UC. So when we talk about those components, what do we actually mean? Well, we're talking about the physical hardware in our loop. We need to go find the uncertainty specs for the sensor, for the controller or transmitter, for the control system's input card, and even for the calibration equipment we're using. And hey, if the system is known to drift over time, we might even add a factor for instability. Okay, once we have our combined uncertainty, there's one last big decision to make. How confident do we really need to be? We decide that using something called a coverage factor, or K. Think of it as a confidence style. Using a K factor of 2 is the industry standard. It gives you about a 95% confidence level. But for your most critical measurements, you might crank that dial up to a K of 3, which gives you over 99.7% confidence. It all boils down to one simple question. What's your appetite for risk? Theory is one thing, but let's make this concrete. We're going to walk through the exact example from the source procedure to see how all these different pieces, the terms, the people, and the formulas all come together in the real world. So here's our setup. We need to figure out the loop tolerance for a critical pressure measurement on a tank. This is a super common and vital task in pretty much any manufacturing plant. The first thing we've done is gather up all the manufacturer's spec sheets for our components. Okay, so step 1 is digging into those spec sheets. Now, manufacturers list accuracy in all kinds of different ways, so a big part of the job is converting everything into the same units to get our UI values. Once we do that for our pressure loop, here's what we've got. And you can see right away, the transmitter is clearly our biggest source of potential error, while the other parts are much more precise. Now for the fun part. We take those individual numbers and we plug them into our root sum of squares formula. We square each one, we add them all up, and then we take the square root of the total. The result is our combined standard uncertainty, our UC. And for this system, it comes out to 0.30 psig. That's pounds per square inch gauge. We are so close. We have just one last step. We need to turn this combined uncertainty into our practical loop tolerance. We're going to go with the standard coverage factor of K equals 2, which gives us that 95% confidence level. To do that, we simply multiply our UC by our K factor. And boom, there it is. Our final calculated loop tolerance is plus or minus 0.60 psi. That is the magic number. This is what the system owner documents and hands off to the calibration team. It means that when a technician goes out to check this instrument, as long as it's reading within that 0.60 window of the true value, it's considered intolerance and good to go. So there you have it. We went from this kinda fuzzy concept of uncertainty all the way to a rock-solid, actionable number. We've seen the serious engineering that goes on behind the scenes to make sure you can actually trust the data you're seeing. So the next time you look at a critical process value, you won't just see a number, you'll understand the calculated confidence that's built into it. That leaves me with one last question for you. What's one critical measurement in your work that you're going to look at just a little differently tomorrow?